Well, good morning. Hello, and thank you for joining us. I am Kelly Nerick, the Senior Director of Products and Services for the Small Business Association of Michigan. And a couple of years ago, SBAM teamed up with TransAmerica and Graystone Consulting of Farmington Hills, a business of Morgan Stanley, to launch an exclusive pooled employer retirement plan for our members. Our program is a perfect example of how our influence and strength in numbers brings together a program led by top experts in the industry that most small businesses wouldn't be able to take advantage of on their own. We give you exclusive cost savings and we simplify the administration tasks while reducing your fiduciary liability. Um, I encourage you to visit our website at sbam.org/retirement to learn more about the program and how it could benefit you and your employees. So joining us today are our representatives from Graystone Consulting and TransAmerica, as well as our guest speaker, Senior Retirement Strategist at Capital Group, Sue Walton. And we are going to be reviewing the 4 key changes within the Secure Act 2.0. The Secure Act 2.0 is a significant piece of legislation that went into effect last year, impacting retirement savings. And it's intended to make it easier for businesses to offer retirement plans and for individuals to save for retirement. You are currently muted. However, we do encourage you to use the Q&A feature as we go along. If you have any questions, and then at the end, we'll open it up for everybody to be able to speak and ask any sort of questions or comments that you have. So I will turn it over to John Rogers with Graystone Consulting to get us started. Go ahead, John.
Thanks, Kelly, and thank you everyone for joining the webinar today. We're going to be talking about the Secure Act, which has been passed in kind of a series of legislation, and really has made this pooled employer plan structure possible for SBAM. So a few years ago, as Kelly mentioned, we were hired to help SBAM create a program, and that program was developed by SBAM members for SBAM members. So in the pooled employer plan structure, you'll be able to outsource some of your, the great majority of your administrative requirements, greatly reduce your fiduciary requirements when it comes to the investment management of the plan, and really get some efficiencies that aren't available in a single employer plan, such as eliminating the need for an individual plan audit or filing of the 5500. So this is a high-level overview of the benefits of the PEP that was created by the Secure Act. But today we have Sue joining us, who's going to drill into some of the other features of the Secure Act, other benefits to small business owners, particularly with respect to some of the tax credits that are available if you haven't sponsored a plan before. So Sue's an expert in the retirement space. She spends all day working with retirement plans, and works for Capital Group, who you might know as the American Funds. So you may have them in your personal portfolio. They're also the target date fund option that is on the SBAM PEP. So we're really thankful to have Sue here today, and she'll share some of her expertise with respect to the Secure Act. Thanks, Sue.
Well, thank you so much. And what a great opportunity to be part of the conversation. I feel like this has been one of those years that we were talking about this since February of the beginning of the year. So, and we haven't stopped talking about it since. So really from that perspective, I think there is an opportunity to give kind of that 30,000-foot view in terms of the impact of legislation and where we really rely on legislation to help further along these tremendous programs, to really enhance these programs over time. And we've seen it historically in terms of the impact of legislation. And I think before Secure and Secure 2.0, the last real transformative piece of legislation with regard to retirement plans was back in 2006 with the Pension Protection Act, really allowing for a lot of the auto features that we know and love today, and certainly those features that we are building upon in terms of what the provisions for Secure and Secure 2.0 really have to do. in terms of having an impact. So since 2006, Secure 1.0 back in December of 2019. And what is it with, getting legislation through at the very last part of the year? I mean, do they think that I have nothing better to do over the holidays than to review these many provisions and these opportunities from that standpoint? But back in 2019, we did have Secure 1.0 and three real objectives in terms of what we were trying to solve for. Certainly the opportunity to have greater access. So letting more people gain access through these programs and really thinking about what exposure we had. And I think if we look at some of the data, even back in 2019, about half of the small businesses not having exposure relative to their own kind of plan. So really a good opportunity there. And certainly to encourage more savings, higher savings, more participant flexibility. I think Secure 1.0 also had a pretty heavy focus on terms of thinking about lifetime income. So what happens in a post-retirement environment? How do we make defined contribution plans feel and look more like those historical pension plans that have, offered such great retirement income and stability over time? And certainly from a savings perspective, keeping participants in plan longer, extending out the required minimum distribution age that went from into Secure 1.0, 70.5 to 72. So thinking about those things in combination, more access, enhancing the savings and the opportunities there, and a heavy focus on what happens in a post-retirement environment. And to John's point, this is where we got some of the original legislation around pooled employer plans, all about creating efficiencies, all about creating that access and making things really effectively easier, especially as we think about, that end of the marketplace, the smaller businesses that want to have the same kinds of opportunities, because you have the same challenges from a workforce management perspective as well. And this is a highly visible benefit from a participant perspective. But of course, what overshadows Secure 1.0 is this little global pandemic that we seem to, take over the entire world, as well as legislation around CARES, and the CARES provisions really overshadowed anything that folks were really doing from Secure 1.0. But given the popularity, given the support across the different, legislative bodies that we have, as well as from a party perspective. So whether you're Democrat or Republican, this kind of legislation had tremendous support across both the House and the Senate and across party lines. And so Secure 2.0 was in the making pretty quickly after Secure 1.0 had been passed. So December of 2022, again, nothing to do over the holidays except read the 90 plus provisions, some mandatory, some optional, some participant level, some plan level. So the complexity of the legislation for Secure 2.0, not without its own opportunities and challenges. Certainly the number one in terms of what we're going to be focusing, as we're drilling down in the detail, the significant expansion of those startup credits, from those new opportunities to start a plan, encouraging plan creation, greater coverage from that perspective. And then, really the second big sort of focus is addressing some of the behavioral financial opportunities that we've seen in the marketplace. If we think about our demographics in the workforce today, the different generations that are being represented, and certainly the different financial needs and perspectives that we're seeing today, things like allowing for student loan repayment or matching within these programs, a program that it's an optional provision, but something that we've seen in a private letter ruling from Abbott Labs for a number of years. So if your demographic is really that, needing for higher education, younger associates being able to attract and retain those folks, something like student loan repayment, really kind of addressing those things that were holding people back from either participating in the programs or participating fully. The other, I would say, emergency savings, from that standpoint, the opportunity to be saving within these plans. And then emergency withdrawals, having more flexibility in terms of accessing And this is really lessons learned coming out of the CARES provisions as well as the global pandemic. And then this consideration around Rothification across the board, not just a nice to have because we think it's a great idea to diversify the kinds of savings that we have, considering that we'd be potentially in different tax brackets as we move through our career. But the reality is, how do we pay for all these other provisions? We've got to have those that tax income coming in sooner rather than later. So Rothification as a balance to be able to pay for a number of the provisions in and of itself. So not without some opportunities or challenges. So how do you think about 90 plus provisions? We said some optional, some mandatory, and certainly from a timing perspective, a phasing approach in terms of when these opportunities will become available. Now, like I said from the beginning, we've been talking about this since February. In February, it looked great on paper. All of these things that were going to happen, especially those mandatory provisions. We'll highlight one as an example, the required Roth treatment of catch-up contributions, and certainly the technical correction that needed to happen in the language. The way it was written in Secure 2.0 would actually eliminate all catch-up contributions if we didn't have a technical correction. And we've also recognized since December of last year, as we're reading through these great opportunities, that there are challenges from an administrative perspective. Not easy to be able to manage some of these features, especially those that are mandatory. And again, the required Roth treatment of those catch-up contributions was one that was a glaring opportunity. We have been waiting all year and just recently got a reprieve in terms of when that will become mandatory. Instead of 2024 as listed on this page, moving to 2026 in terms of that. And it really is that window to give administrators more time, the opportunity from a plan documents and plan design perspective to make sure that we can incorporate those features, especially from a mandatory basis, and then consider how we would implement relative to our current opportunity set here. So in terms of things that are immediately available to us, we'll go back to that expansion of those tax credits, an immediate opportunity here in 2023, relaxed required minimum distribution. So we said it went from 70.5 to 72 with Secure 1.0. With 2.0, our next phase immediately going from 72 to 73. With an expectation over the next 10 years, it will go to 75. So it's really from that perspective, continuing to push out that required minimum distribution age, which we believe will have an impact in terms of people staying in the plan longer. Really a win-win from both plan sponsors' perspective as well as those opportunities from a participant standpoint, the fiduciary oversight, the lowering or more institutional access to institutional fees, as well as those tools and things that are made available from a participant perspective inside the plan. Really an opportunity there as we think about that. And certainly Rothification, still an opportunity if we think about employer contributions, if we think about what that looks like and some of the flexibility in simples and SEP IRAs as well. So really getting more flexibility in terms of how we want to save, but also creating a little bit more complexity in terms of how we're engaging with participants and helping them make those decisions. I think looking out to 2024, some of the opportunities that, depending on industry by industry, how do I even determine whether or not I should be adding that emergency savings account, whether I want to add that student loan matching, and other features that are available. And certainly we would submit, based on a recent institutional plan sponsor survey, we've identified from a plan sponsor's perspective some of their top priorities if we look into the next year. And those type priorities include things like enhancing participant outcomes, participant engagement, retirement income, as well as this idea around understanding participant demographics. And we think that will be a key driver as plan sponsors are trying to consider what, given the fact that a number of these provisions are optional, what's appropriate for my population and certainly understanding participant demographics will help drive how we think about some of these additional things. Like, do I have a number of participants that have heavy student debt, and are they not participating because of that? If I think about retirement income, do I have an aging population? Is this something that I need to put in the front of mind, top priority in terms of evaluating the options available out there in the marketplace? But certainly understanding our demographics is going to help us get there. And as we look forward, opportunities in 2025 and beyond, certainly this increased catch-up contributions opportunity, retirement savings lost and found. So back to this idea around demographics, our younger generation in the workforce today will have a significant number of jobs. If we think auto features like were allowed for in the Pension Protection Act of 2006 are working, does this mean I get a number of people into a plan, start them saving, only to find that 12 to 18 months later, they're going to move on to the next gig, making sure that they stay connected with the savings that they've already put out there, and make sure that it's meaningful to them. So retirement savings lost and found, really an opportunity there to keep people connected, and certainly other features like required automatic enrollment, auto escalation for new plans. Any new plan that was established after 12/29/22, so after the signing of the law, that by 2025 they need to have those auto features that are going to be required. So really setting a new bar, I think, not only for the plans that have already been established, but still waiting on some guidance and insight in terms of what does this mean if I have a merger or acquisition? Does this effectively create a new plan, and do these new provisions hold true in terms of something that will be required for me as well? So kind of that carrot or stick. Carrot from the way of, this sets a new bar and a new example in terms of what is kind of best practice out there, versus a stick means is mandatory for some of these new plans. So things to keep in mind. We're not saying any of this is, easy or straightforward, but there are some opportunities here that we can dig a little deeper and have a better understanding in terms of what the opportunities exist. And I think one of those areas in particular, and I am just talking on and on, so maybe I'll pause there before we bring up more of the detail around some of those credits, tax credits, and maybe just take a pause to see, are there questions or opportunities in terms of what we've discussed so far? And I'll take the silence as the opportunity to keep going.
Doesn't seem like there's any questions so far, but thank you for that helpful summary of the key changes that came about as Secure Act 2.0. But I think just to summarize, you're going to dig into the tax credits here, so that the small business owners on this call can really understand what money is out there to help them, and why there's never been a better time to start a retirement plan than right now. But then I also think it's useful for those who have plans now to know what's coming. And I think it's kudos to SBAM for educating members kind of ahead of these changes. So looks like this is a summary of some of the tax credits that are available.
Absolutely. And we would agree this is one of the most transformative parts of the legislation, just simply because if we think about the barriers from a small business perspective in terms of why I would not be starting my own plan, top of the list is going to be cost. So if we can remove that part of it, right? If we think about the available tax credits today, and we're going to focus on Secure 2.0 because it did expand the opportunity set from a tax credit standpoint. It's both from tax credits in terms of starting the plan, as well as credits for the costs of the plan as well. So thinking about what this might mean, what do you need in terms of the qualification here? No more than 100 employees that receive compensation of $5,000 or more in the preceding year. And the employer did not offer a plan covering the same, effectively covering the same employee base during the previous last 3 years. So from a starting point, If you've got people, no more than 100 employees, as well as you've not offered something in the past that's covering this employee base, these are some opportunities. That's qualification. From a tax credit standpoint, so a decreasing percentage in the amount contributed by the employer for each employee, and then up to $1,000 per employee over the first 3 years. We break this down a little bit more specifically so you can see in the center of the page, how does the tax credit apply to different plans and sizes? Don't mind different pop-ups that are, if my computer completely shuts down, it's because I ignored that. But if we think about the phase downs, the schedule here, the credit for smaller plans, you've got with 50 or fewer phasing down. So year 1, 100% of the coverage, year 2, 100%, year 3, 75%, year 4, 50, and year 5, 25% of those costs. And the percentages apply to the amount of employer contributions. So you've got both this opportunity from a credit standpoint as well as from those contributions as well. So we used a couple different examples here, which we think kind of bring it to life. If you think about how a new employer could use these, so let's say as an example, I've got an employer with 12 employees, 10 are making less than 100K, 9 of the 10 participate, and each contributes $3,000 a year. The employer matches 50%, so it's 50 cents on the dollar. So if you think about those employer contributions, so it'd be the 50% times the 3,000 of employee contributions. So it's a $1,500 cost for each of those 9 employees. The credit is 100% times the 1,500, so 1,500 for those 9 employees, but capped at 1,000 each. Year 1, the tax credit would be 9,000 based on 13,500 for total employer contributions. That's one example. Example 2, the employer has 70 employees, 60 are making less than 100K. So really focused in on that as an example. 54 of the 60 participate and they contribute that 3,000 a year. Employer matches 1,500. So if we go back to that formula, so 50% of the 3,000, 1,500 per employee of 54 employees, the tax credit calculation, 60%. So the formula here in terms of those that had in excess of 50 employees, so that 50 to 100, and that ends up being about $900 for each of those 54 employees, and the total tax credit here at the 48,600. So we are looking at some of these programs that are significantly covering a lot of the costs, both from the credit standpoint as well as the contributions. And we are going through these examples very specifically. We will be sending this piece out to you, so you'll have it in hand. And it really is this opportunity to try to think about how to maximize that benefit. And certainly, so cost was one of the barriers to entry from a new program perspective, but certainly administration, complexity, fiduciary responsibilities, those are also some of the challengers. And if we think about the opportunity to participate in like a pooled employer program where you've got, minimizing that fiduciary responsibility, simplifying that process from an administrative standpoint, that again takes away another one of those objections that plan sponsors may have had. And there is a recognition that many states are starting to mandate some of these programs, and that this is an opportunity to utilize the tax credits that are available to you and have access to something like a pooled employer program. It just feels like this combination and the timing of such could really be a win-win for a number of smaller businesses and plan sponsors. So a lot to unpack here, but I think it does give us a great framework to have the conversation that we have really thought about this from a number of different ways. We've seen plan sponsors really embrace this opportunity. So we've had a significant number of startups, especially in some of those states where it has become mandatory from that mandatory adoption, especially on the smaller end of the spectrum from a plan size and a business size.
And in Michigan, it hasn't become mandatory yet. I know that SBAM will advocate on behalf of you as their members, and has been part of conversations, with Lansing on, how that could potentially roll out. It's also one of the reasons why they got ahead of it, and offered this type of program to members. But I think Sue did a great job just kind of zooming out. There are tax credits available for the startup costs of your plan, and there are tax credits available, for a number of years for the contributions made to your employees, into the plan. So the government is helping you alleviate the startup costs, and really with the SBAM pooled employer program, eliminate that cost with the tax credit the way that we have this structured. And they're also helping, with the matching contributions that the company will make into the plan, in the form of tax credits early on. So, this is a huge benefit that you can offer to your employees if you don't sponsor a 401k plan, retirement plan right now. And I'd encourage you to take a look at your individual situation and your employee population, to see if it's a fit. And then if you have a plan now, I encourage you to visit sbam.org/retirement. I'll share the screen here so that you can see the page. And what we have is a site that has information about the program. You can request a proposal through the site. But high level, if you have a plan now, I would use this as an opportunity to benchmark that plan, see what kind of costs and services you're getting from your current situation. Maybe we'll be able to get rid of the annual audit or filing of the 5500. So check us out, and want to thank Sue for providing the education on the Secure Act and 2.0. So Kelly, you would take everybody off mute?
Yeah.
And actually, John, there was a question in the chat
Okay.
that might be addressed with what you were just sharing, because they're asking if a company is currently in a simple and transitions to a PEP, can they use those matching contributions from a tax or matching contribution tax credits? I think you just had it up there, or at least part of that answer.
Yeah. So, if you, on your paper as well, if you've offered that plan in the past, the tax credits may not be available, but we can look at your individual situation. I don't know when you started the simple. So feel free to reach out. And it looks like we've got a hand raise here as well.
Yeah, Bill, go ahead with your question.
Hi, Bill Grubb. I'm a member of SBAM now and considering moving our existing 401k plan to the PEP. And the question would be, so with this Secure Act of having mandatory for plans after 2022, I guess, be a mandatory that everybody participates. It's a mandatory participation. Would that also hold true if I moved my plan to the PEP?
So that's, first of all, that's for all those Secure Act provisions are for all plans. So they're not just the rules within a PEP. Even individual 401k plans are going to have the opportunities and mandates that are outlined in Sue's presentation. But it sounds like your plan was started prior to the date that they listed to require that automatic enrollment. So I don't think you'll have to right now. Sue, anything to add to that?
My guess, and this is where I think we are going to look for additional guidance, my guess is transitioning from your standalone plan into a PEP may not change your status, but I don't know that we have definitive guidance on that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments that they'd like to share? Okay. All right, looks like we're good. Thank you, Sue and John. I appreciate your time so much. You're just so knowledgeable in all of this information, and we're so grateful that we have you on our team. If anybody would like to ask any follow-up questions, please visit that webpage. My contact information is on there, and I'll be sure to get you to the right person. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care.